Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Jungle Cincinnati Bengals podcast brought to you by the Riverfront and the Blue Wire. My name is Owen Timmerding, again joined this week by Caroline Palmer. And the Cincinnati Bengals are 2-0. They're at the top of the AFC North, but it comes with a big glaring hole. Yesterday, obviously, the news is out by now. Everyone knows what happened. Joe Burrow suffered a turf toe injury in the second quarter of the game. He, from original reports, it only felt like he was going to be out for a couple weeks, maybe even 2 to 3. He then, as it went on, got some looks at some specialists. He was upgraded to a grade 3 turf toe, ligament tears, the whole 9 yards, as every Joe Burrow injury seems to be, with a minimum 3-month recovery. It's kind of all I got. I'm a little bummed out. It's frustrating, Caroline, to say the least.
Yeah, I think so too. And we were talking a little bit before we started. I think that obviously, like for me, I have hounded on the importance of what an offensive line and how important that was to maintain the success that they had last year. And the injury came from a very quick succession of a collapse in the pocket.
Mm-hmm.
Like against a defensive line that was by far and away not even close to the best one that they would have faced this year. And to me, I look at that going, if that doesn't happen in that game, what happens when you play like the Lions in 2 weeks and their defensive line is all back and healthy and very strong? Like what happens
Mm-hmm.
when you play the Packers and you have Micah Parsons running at you every single play? For me, I'm just a little bit disappointed in general, but I feel like obviously I'm disappointed because I feel like it's same story, different year when it comes to the Joe Burrow thing. And he's starting to throw that question mark of is he injury prone? But at the same time, I'm extremely disappointed where I feel like the offensive line kind of failed him a little bit yesterday.
Yeah, the Bengals have failed Joe Burrow. Two things can be true. The Bengals have failed Burrow to put it behind him a good offensive line for all 6 years of his career. At the same time, I think it's very fair to label Joe Burrow as injury prone because now we're going to work under the assumption that Burrow is probably out for the season based on the minimum 3-month recovery and based on some stuff I've read online. The minimum is very optimistic tone and is more of just a surgical operative term and more just this is how long someone in peak condition could come back. So we'll see what happens with Joe Burrow. The Bengals have failed to put Joe Burrow behind a good pass blocking O-line. And he's bailed them out of that for 6 years. At the same time, Burrow has now gone down with an ACL injury, a wrist injury, and a turf toe ligament injury on his toe. And part of that is to do with him not having any sort of protection, no time in the pocket, and it just seems to be a revolving door back there. And I read something pretty great last night that it seems like the way the Bengals have strategized this offensive line is you're almost banking on Burrow getting semi-hurt every single year and hoping it's not season ending. And they were fine the Super Bowl year. He was then sort of hurt the next year, then was very hurt the other next year, and he was fine last year. He even got banged up towards the end of the season, and now here we are in week 2, and Burrow's out until mid-December at best.
Yeah, I have an interesting take here. I was
Yeah.
looking at everything, obviously, especially this morning, because that's when a lot of the stuff came out. I think that again, this is an issue that has been plaguing the Bengals for years. I think it's arguably one of the reasons they lost the Super Bowl a couple of years ago.
Well, yeah.
I mean, it was just because Joe Burrow couldn't release the ball without getting sacked. But when you look at this year, we went into the draft. You and I said it. I feel like almost every Bengals fan on the planet was saying it is you needed to address defensive end. You needed to get a good guard, if not two, because the offensive line as a positional whole was a position of need for them. And I feel like in the offseason, when it came to the draft, when it came to getting players, it got majorly overshadowed by the fact that the defense was bottom 3 in the league. And I think they didn't address it because they needed to fix that side of the ball. And I think now we are starting to see the repercussions of that. I go on and on and on about how I think offensive line is the most crucial position in football, period. They're the most important 5 people on the field on offense, and the Bengals are refusing to address that situation. And again, you talk about, oh, it's not, we just need to make sure Joe Burrow isn't season ending. This is the third time now we've dealt with the, oh, it shouldn't be season ending, but it is. If I'm a Bengals player, if I'm Jamar Chase, if I'm T. Higgins, if I'm Chase Brown, if I'm Shamar Stewart or Trey Henderson, I'm infuriated right now because that is your best player from last year who you know your organization needs to win games is now out for the season because I feel like the organization failed him again. And I feel like we
Yep.
should be saying this for the 3rd season. Like, it's happening every other year, and it's a pattern you don't want. Like, it's almost worse than having a healthy quarterback who's, like, average for the whole year because you don't even have access to him.
I was thinking yesterday, what's better? Would you rather have a revolving door at quarterback like the Jets and the Browns and the Raiders and teams like that? Or would you rather have a guy who's on again, off again on the field? He's a Hall of Famer when he's on the field, MVP when he's on the field, but he gets hurt every other year. I don't really know which one you'd rather choose. I guess I'd go with the latter because
I think I would too.
yeah, because at least you got something. I just don't even know what to really think at this point because it's frustrating that he's hurt
Yeah.
again. It's frustrating that you can't blame someone for getting hurt. It's just
No,
all
you can't.
just dumb all around. I think people have the right to be frustrated. I don't even. It's just I'm kind of at a loss for words now. I feel like we've talked about everything that is being brought up again and again and again all these times, and like I don't know. At the same time, the Bengals went out and got an Orlando Brown. They went out and drafted Amarius Mims, who we all really liked. Fairchild, we all really liked. I just don't know if it's a scouting thing. I don't know if it's a scheme thing. The Bengals have gotten offensive linemen that the fans and people on the team have been excited about at times, especially Orlando Brown, who actually graded well yesterday, but that's not neither here nor there. At the same time, you pretty much have your starting right guard that you signed 2 weeks ago with Dalton Reisner, and you're starting a rookie there too. He looked awful yesterday. I don't really
Yeah.
know what part of it
I was gonna
was
say
part,
that right side of the offensive line
and
could
that's
not
what
get
was the
anything going yesterday, and that was
yeah.
what side collapsed on Joe Burrow.
Well, there you go. Then that's our answer. I just don't understand at this point what the direction is. It almost just feels like the Bengals are cursed. I know that's a cop out, but it's just like at the
Yeah.
same time they have this was a pretty interesting. The Bengals. I mean, say what you want about the organization. Here's an interesting take just from the last 20 years that the Bengals have had with a quarterback.
Mhm.
2005, Carson Palmer gets his knee blown out in the playoffs against Pittsburgh. That Bengals team was probably Super Bowl caliber. 2008, because then the Steelers ended up going on to win that 2005 Super Bowl. And
Yeah.
funny enough, I was watching the pregame show and they were talking about that. And I turned to my girlfriend and said, man, like they're talking about the Steelers winning that Super Bowl. The Bengals probably could have won it, but they lost. And I told her the whole story. And then
Yeah.
an hour and a half later, we're watching Joe Burrow get rolled up on. And he's hurt.
Yeah. Rolled off the field.
2008. Yeah. And this is from Joe Goodberry. He does great work too on at Bengals Twitter. 2008, Carson Palmer partially tears UCL, misses the season. 2015, and this is what killed me. Andy Dalton breaks thumb as the Bengals looked like the best team in the NFL, and they probably were. Andy Dalton probably would have, should have, could have won an MVP. Andy Dalton would have, should have,
Yeah.
could have won an MVP that year. Like I'm not even kidding. If you're
No,
new to
I
this
know what you're talking
program,
about. It's
look at
just
the stats. He was that
yeah,
good.
modern
2020
day is
Burrow,
laughable,
yeah,
but
it's funny. 2020 Burrow gets his left knee taken out, tears everything in it.
mhm.
2023 has this awful major calf injury that we don't really know about through the whole preseason. He starts to get rolling by week 5, falls on his wrist, tears ligaments in a rare injury. 2025, Burrow tears ligaments in his toe that requires surgery, a rarity for quarterbacks. it's just like at some point the Bengals can't get out of their own way. And I
Yeah,
don't really know what the solution is at that. Maybe that's just how it is. Like I can't really say anything at this point.
yeah,
What is true? They failed to put an offensive line behind him. They know how the scheme wants to be run. They haven't put the players around Joe Burrow that is needed to be succeed. They're riding off the coattails of a Super Bowl appearance that was, at some cases, I don't know how the hell that happened. Sorry for curse. How that happened in 2021. Like looking back on it now, we're so far removed from that. So I don't know. It looks pretty bleak. At the same time, like in 2023, when Jake Browning came in, he was 4-3 as a starter. Had some pretty exciting wins against the Vikings. They killed the Colts. They put themselves in a scenario where they could go make the playoffs again. They lost to one of the better Chiefs defenses we've had in the last 10 years by 8 points in a game that the Bengals kind of controlled for 3/4 or for at least a half. So it's like, and then again, is it a system thing? Like, just the Bengals don't make any sense. And I feel like we've said that time and time again. I'm going to trust Jake Browning because I'm not just going to quit on the Bengals. That's just not
yeah.
my personality. But it's really hard to get up for it if your franchise quarterback, who you've invested all this time in, who you've invested other pieces in to as well, can't stay on the field because of decisions that have been made schematically.
Yeah, I'm gonna say something here about Jake Browning. I don't hate this call either. I feel like there's a lot of teams in the NFL where their franchise quarterback goes down and they have worse options to turn to.
Absolutely.
And Jake Browning has already proved himself by being a long-term backup. Granted, we all know, I think even he knows, he's no franchise NFL quarterback. But the one stat that I really like that he has going for him is his passing accuracy, which I think in a pass heavy offense is kind of what you need.
Mm-hmm.
Historically, that is his strength. And I think that that's something that'll carry them. And honestly, again, you talked about earlier, you never want anyone to get hurt across any sport. You never wish that upon whether it's someone on a team you're rooting for or in a team that you may not like or your least favorite team across any sport. What I will say is if it was going to happen, it happening now is not as bad as it looks
Yeah, that's what I've been
because
saying
you
too.
are giving Jake Browning time to adjust. You are giving him time to build rhythm. You are giving him a time to form an actual relationship with people like Jamar Chase, with people like T. Higgins, with Noah Fant, with Chase Brown. You are giving him this opportunity to make it his system for this year. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that that's the best place that he can be in because that's what you want. This, like on Sunday, I thought he played great given the circumstance that he was in, but you could tell he was nervous. You could tell he had had no prep time with those guys going in there. It's why he threw 3 interceptions. Like, it just happened. But now he gets to go back. They get to regroup, be like, hey, Browning's our guy going forward. This is just how it's going to work. You have a dedicated offense in there. I think they understand what needs to happen and what needs to get done. It's just we need to allow Jake Browning that time to grow into that offense, which you have the advantage of he's already done it before with relatively a lot of the same key figureheads on that offensive side. So I think it'll be a faster transition with Browning to this offense than you see with a lot of backup quarterbacks because usually it's
Mm-hmm.
different from year to year. You don't have a lot of organizations that stick with that same guy year after year. You backup quarterbacks honestly trade way more than starters do across the league. I feel like you see them all bounce around every year in the offseason. So I think this will be a good thing for them. I think it's in a better situation than most teams in the league would be if their franchise quarterback went down week 2. Obviously, Jake Browning is not Joe Burrow, but I don't think this is I don't think I'm ready to press the panic alarm yet. Obviously, I'm a little bit nervous because it
Yeah.
is a backup quarterback taking the realm, but I feel like it's a hot take. I'm not pushing the panic button yet. I'm not at that point yet. Like, I
Well,
personally am not. I'm not as
and
worried
yeah.
as some people should be.
And here's why. It's because the Bengals are 2-0. If the Bengals were
Like,
0-2,
they're one
if
of
the
6
Bengals
teams right now that are 2-0.
if like legitimately, if the Bengals were 2-0 or were 0-2, you probably have conversations of, do we just sell out the rest of the year, maybe try to trade people, and that's it. Honestly, they can still do that because we're in week 2. But this 2-0 kind of honestly gives the Bengals a buffer if Burrow
Yeah.
ends up coming back. We looked at the schedule before. As soon as the 3-month thing came out, I was like, all right, so let's look at the schedule. There's potentially 11 to 12 games that Burrow could miss. Best case scenario, he comes back. I was like, they find a way to win 5 to 6 games over those 11 game stretch. Pretty much just play 500 football. And to me, that'd be kind of hard not to do with the weapons the Bengals have on offense. And we
Yeah.
saw it when Browning played 7 games in 2023. The Bengals timeline for, again, I don't think Burrow's coming back, but operating that if he comes back in the middle of December, it'd be at Minnesota, at Denver, versus the Lions, at Green Bay, versus Pittsburgh, versus the Jets, versus the Bears, at the Steelers, versus the Patriots, at Baltimore, at Buffalo, versus Baltimore. In that stretch of 11 games, there are at least 3 that I think you can look at right now and say the Bengals will absolutely win those games. That's the Jets game, that's the Bears game, that's the Patriots game. That's 3 games right there. So for the next 8, you pretty much got to squeeze out 2 wins. And in that, I think they can win next week at Minnesota. I think they can maybe beat Denver. And then you could and then the rest of the, like we said, we also said this, we talked to each other before. They have 2 games against Pittsburgh, 2 games against Baltimore. All divisional games are kind of a crapshoot to begin with. You saw it in the
Especially in the
Bengals-Browns
AFC
game,
North.
especially in the AFC North. You have to find a way to win 2 games out of Minnesota, Denver, Detroit, Green Bay, twice versus Pittsburgh, twice versus Baltimore, and at Buffalo. Like, then you look at that and you can kind of talk yourself into it, because it's not like the Bengals are rolling out mid-tier receivers either. They have
No.
the best receiver probably in the NFL, who had an awesome game yesterday. We haven't even talked about the Bengals game
I
yesterday.
know,
We're
we
gonna get to
haven't
that in a
even talked
second.
about it yet.
And then you have the best number 2 in the NFL, and a running back who they got to find a way to get going if this thing's ever going to work. But so, like, I don't know. Then you can kind of talk yourself into the Bengals being 8-5, and maybe Burrow comes back and then they can win 3 games and be 11-6. So it's like, I don't know. You can kind of talk yourself into it, but at the same time, it's just super bleak because you feel like Joe Burrow absolutely needs to be out there. Then the other thing I'm thinking too is the Bengals are 2-0, and they've pretty much played 2 games without Joe Burrow, because he was awful in Cleveland and he was bad when that first game in the first quarter. He had the touchdown to Jamar, but other than that, he wasn't great. And then he got hurt in the middle of the second quarter. So you're 2-0 pretty much without your franchise quarterback. I think that's a fair take, and it's true, because Burrow's played 5 quarters, and Browning looked better in the 3 that he played afterwards. So, like, again, this is just kind of seems to be life being a Bengals fan, is that you think you know what you're going to get, but at the same time, like, it never has failed to change your opinion and change stuff up. For all I know, Jake Browning can go into Minnesota next week and light it up, and we'd be having a totally different conversation.
Yeah, I mean, before we jump into Minnesota, because I feel like we can kind of end with that,
Yeah.
I want to shout out a couple people on defense
Yeah,
from
let's get into the game. Start with defense, get into the game.
Yes, I want to start with
Bengals beat the Jags
Jags.
in a thriller and put the Bengals in a position to work their way out of this now. So start with the defensive stars, Caroline.
Absolutely. Again, I think the defense, it was an interesting game to watch. I spoke earlier, we had a game, so I watched the game on the bus on the way home at like 4. So I was a little bit behind, but I didn't think it was an all across great game from the Bengals defense. But what was important to me, and I think will be important as we continue throughout the season, especially because the defense is going to need this to happen. I think they have done a great job across 2 weeks of stepping up when it matters most. Like when you need to make that play to save a touchdown, to intercept, to block them from getting into field goal range, they have stepped up. In the 2 names that I would like to give my personal shout out based on how I thought they played and even statistically throughout the game for the Cincinnati Bengals is oh my gosh, my voice just got caught. Daxton Hill and Jordan Battle. I feel
Hmm.
like they stand out because both of them had interceptions, respectively. But Daxton Hill also led the team in tackles all day. I always think that that is a great place to be in because maybe you're not getting to the quarterback, but you are stopping the other team from progressing. And then Jordan Battle has that big time interception as well that sets up a great field goal for him. So I just think that those two guys deserve their props. Trey got another sack this week. I feel like we're just back to normal for Trey Hendrickson.
He looked good yesterday.
Shamar Stewart seems to be okay. I feel like that's the other thing we've glanced over. Shamar
Yeah.
Stewart did leave the game with an injury. We haven't heard anything, but all reports that I have seen have basically said he's not dealt with anything major, so don't be alarmed if he's like limited reps in practice just to monitor that. But I think he's going to be fine, which is a great sign because I thought he looked well, like he looked okay until he went out. But again, I think Battle and Hill were fantastic. I think as a whole, they just step up when it matters. And I think especially now with that backup quarterback at the helm, that those moments are going to become even more important on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, Cam Taylor Britt had a good game, good coverage grades. I I hope I feel like the defensive individual stats might be a tad inflated because of some of the drops that Jacksonville had too.
Mm-hmm.
So like I don't know. I thought Cam Taylor Britt had a good game. He stood out. Defense as a whole, like we said this before, they looked really bad in the first half, but they kind of just make it happen when you need it to. I mean,
Yeah.
they got lucky that Jacksonville went for it on that 4th and 5, and Brian Thomas Jr. dropped it like he was open.
Yeah.
He was probably open for a score,
BTJ did not have the
and
best game for them
no,
yesterday.
they had bad. He had a bad game. ETN, I shout out people who drafted him in like round 10 of the fantasy, or he was going so late. He's had 2
Yeah.
awesome games, and
Oh,
now
yeah.
he's like he got totally written off.
I want to
And I
say he's
mean,
like he's up like top 5 running backs this year in fantasy, I think.
he's been great.
So,
Lawrence, I thought he was fine. Just the thing about the Bengals defense is, man, they don't get any pressure. They really don't.
no.
But the thing is, and listen to this, the 2 most important plays of this game were Dax Hill's interception, this being the first one, because then you
Mhm.
stop them from going down 14-0. And I think Dommy Brown was maybe the intended receiver. He was wide open. But Trevor
Oh,
Lawrence gets
yeah.
rocked by Trey Hendrickson, and he can't get enough on it, and Dax Hill's right there to turn around. So that doesn't happen if you don't have a Trey Hendrickson. And then at the end of the game, obviously, it kind of seems like you're out of reach. Jaguars don't have any timeouts, but instead of even like playing with your food, Trey Hendrickson gets in there, sack, 12 seconds run off the clock because everyone's down the field for Jacksonville. You had the
Yeah.
fire drill, toss the football around, lateral game at the end, but that was not really ever a worry. But
No.
like Trey Hendrickson continues to make such a big impact in this game. He's not as replaceable as some people might have thought, I being one. Yeah, I think he had a great game. Bengals don't win without him yesterday because then they lose by a
Absolutely.
touchdown. They really do. One thing I want to actually shout out is the Bengals touchdown drive to win the game was
Yes.
great, in my opinion.
Mhm.
Zach Taylor, for whatever reason, the playbook gets opened up when Joe Burrow goes down because that play that there was a methodical long drive that they used the clock the right way and ended it with a touchdown. Like you couldn't ask for much better. Now the thing is, too, like you had that pass interference call down 4th and 5 that is now
Mhm.
being debated. In my opinion, by definition, by the way the NFL has laid out what pass interference is. Travis Hunter didn't turn his head, and technically it made a play. That's why it was called. I also think Travis Hunter maybe gets that call 5 years down the line and not a
Yeah.
rookie. So I don't know. I mean, what were your thoughts on the Bengals? I mean, did you see the end of the game? I thought it was pretty well executed, and they hit Jamar Chase for some good plays,
Absolutely.
and they started to utilize the tight ends. And Gesicki had a nice catch, and I thought he might have scored the game-winning touchdown. Very well executed. And I tell you what, that my favorite play of the day was the 4th and 2, backed up inside your own 25, and they dump it off to Chase Brown on a nice little route, and he picks up
Mhm.
extra yardage too easily.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I agree with you. I think that finding a way to get Chase Brown involved in the rushing game and not just as a receiver
Yeah.
it's going to be really important to their success going forward to not put all the pressure on Jake Browning in that passing game. But you want to know it has to get a little bit better for your run game to start becoming
Yeah.
involved is the big guys up front. And
Yeah.
right now, there is a large question mark with those big guys up front. And I think the next 3 weeks for them are really going to be a test of what this is going to look like because you have 3 very strong defensive lines in quick succession in your next 3 games.
Mhm. It's
So,
interesting. I don't Browning puts the Bengals in a position to win some games. He really
absolutely.
does. And Seth and I were talking about potentially trading him in August before the season started, and thank God that that didn't happen,
Yeah,
because the Bengals would
have
be
them right
starting
here.
Desmond Ritter, and that would be really over right
Yeah,
now.
I that's when the panic alarm would have gotten pressed for me.
Yeah, he that would have been a disaster. And now here's the other thing too: is Bengals probably need to sign a QB. There's some interesting names out there, free agency wise. Kyle Trask, Tannehill is a name I saw. I don't think in any world that happens.
I don't think so
No,
either.
they could trade for. They have Brett Rippon on roster already,
Mm.
and there's a world there they trade for Kirk Cousins.
I
I don't
did see
know.
that. I
I
did
don't
see
think
that.
that happens. It's unless the Falcons want to take all the cap hit, there's no way that happens, in my opinion. People want Jameis, which is
Gosh.
whatever. I don't know.
Jameis is just a vibes guy.
I think it'd be funny. I mean, Browning has a better passer rating than than uh than Jameis does all time for than what I've read. I'm
Yeah,
fine running it back with Jake Browning. It was a
I am
fun
too.
2023 was a fun. I remember that team actually quite fondly. And instead of it being, yeah, it sucked that Burrow got hurt, but I remember some very fun games with the Jake Browning experience. One being the Minnesota game, one being the Jacksonville game. And the funny part is, if the Bengals win on Sunday, Jake Browning is going to be 4-0 versus Jacksonville and Minnesota.
That's
Like,
crazy.
that's ridiculous. So, and again, like, he puts them in a spot to win because if you got Jamar Chase, if you got some guy that could put it in his radius, you're making it happen. I also really liked how they used Jamar Chase in the screen game.
Yeah,
That's an
I
auto
thought it was
first down.
it
Like
is.
if it's insane. I was telling my girlfriend, I was like, this guy's a bowling ball. He's like, if you
Mhm.
get it to him, it looks like he's stopped sometimes at the line of scrimmage, and then he just kind of puts forward. And it's kind of
Yeah,
amazing watching him. He didn't have like any glamorous plays. He just had 14 receptions for 165 yards and a
165
touchdown
yards.
on 16 targets.
Yeah.
Like what? That was
And it's like
awesome.
kind of one of those like sneaky games where the game ends and you're like, dang, 165 yards. Like it's just because all of those little like screenplays added up at the end of the game.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of like I feel like this is like such a reach connection, but I feel like that was like how prime Travis Kelce was. He was never
Mhm.
getting like 60-yard bombs, but you look, you're like 170 yards. How did that happen? It's
Yeah.
because when you play them on every single screen pass, it adds up at the end of the game. So,
Higgin yeah.
yeah, there was a quote that Jamar Chase said in an interview after the game that I really
Yeah,
liked
what'd he
talking
say?
about Jake Browning. He said, "We've all been here before with Jake. We've
I didn't
gotta
see
let him
this.
be himself at the end of the day. We've all gotta push him to be better, but also allow him to push us to be better and just execute." I think that's fantastic.
He said that?
Yeah,
Wow.
that is wide receiver Jamar Chase about quarterback Jake Browning.
I just got goosebumps.
It's
That
amazing. Like,
you know
I
how awesome
loved
that makes
hearing
me
that.
feel? You know how
Like,
awesome that
that's
makes me feel?
amazing. I can, like, s it's awesome.
I really hope man, that's great.
Yeah,
Good for him.
yeah,
The,
and he's not known for being the best press conference guy either.
that's what I was worried about when I saw
Yeah.
his well, I just looked up on Twitter Jamar Chase quote, and I haven't
Yeah.
found it yet, but I'll look at it. But it's, he says, I'm just scrolling through it all, and the first thing that popped up is the Jamar Chase quote after like the terrible Titans loss the Bengals had a couple years ago, and it's the famous "I'm open, I'm always effing open" quote that he had.
Yeah.
And like,
Oh,
man,
man.
I hope Jamar Chase, good for him. He said on
Yeah.
Jake Browning's Late Heroics, great curse word game. I mean, Jamar
That's
Chase
so
is
Jamar
legit.
Chase coded.
Yeah, it is. I thought Higgins had another good game. I mean,
I
also
did
the
too.
touchdown he had was like the easiest throw ever. He was wide
Mhm,
open right out the gate. Um,
mhm.
we haven't talked about this enough. Mitchell Tinsley, what the
Oh
heck?
my
Did you see that
yeah.
touchdown? I'm sure because maybe you
Yeah.
missed part of it. That was like that was awesome. He had one reception,
Yeah.
13 yards, and it was a great touchdown where I guess the shin counts as a second. It's like remember when it was like the your butt counts as 2 feet.
The
I
second
didn't
feet, yeah.
the second,
Well,
but
your
the
shin's
the
technically
shin.
on your leg, so,
But
like, I feel like that's a
yeah,
little bit more
I guess
understandable
yeah, I
than
didn't
your
know that.
butt.
The I think it's interesting too that I mean, Burrow's one of Burrow's calling cards is that he's been so good forever of utilizing everyone, whether it's the first
Yeah.
teamers, second teamers. Browning has only run with the twos this year, so it's like you'd kind of love to see Yoshavash break out a little bit. I mean, Charlie
Mhm.
Jones to me is a non-factor on this team. I don't know what his plan is, but like a guy like Tinsley, who Burrow raved about, but he's
Yeah.
not had those reps with Joe Burrow. His reps have been with uh with Jake
Browning.
Browning. So it's like, and it's kind of hard to like it'd be Jamar Chase and Tickets are so good that
Yeah.
Jake Browning can afford to not have that natural chemistry that Burrow has, especially with Chase, because if he kind of just gets it to Jamar Chase, he's makes it happen. So it's like I don't
Yeah. Jamar Chase is also gonna start drawing double coverage. Like,
yeah, and that opens
knowing
up the
that you have
field
a
for
backup
everyone.
quarterback. But the thing that I'm like, I got so excited when I saw that Tinsley touchdown is because he was one of those people that obviously you mentioned Joe Burrow raved about, but he was also one of those preseason standouts. And a lot of the
Mhm.
time when you look at preseason standout, it's like, oh, it's a guy that's never gonna play in the regular season and it's just a third string. Like, I love when those guys have great games. Like, it is so awesome because it's almost like you're
Yeah.
proving all these people wrong in what you do. Because there was the one last week too with the Lions, who the
Yeah.
rookie had one catch and it was the
It was a
one-hander, and then
crazy
you have
play.
Mitchell Tinsley this week doing not the same thing, but, like, kind of in that general range of just, like, having his moment, and, like, I
Yeah.
love seeing those guys have those moments. Like, it is awesome. Like, it is a way to put yourself on the map. Like, it's super cool, like, super awesome.
It's great. So I mean, pretty I'd say today is about as positive as you can get as after the just bleak news of Burrow
Yeah.
out for a long time. It's just it stinks. Another thing I forgot to add is that Ian Rappaport said that all the experts from recommended surgery. So it's
Yeah.
like it's not
I
like
had, like, a sneaking feeling when he left the stadium in crutches and a boot that surgery was gonna be the answer. That was just my knowledge of
yeah,
injuries going, "Ooh, I don't think this is gonna be a 1 to 2 week thing." Because doesn't Brock Purdy have turf toe too?
but he's only out. He has like the grade
But his
two.
isn't yeah, his isn't as bad. Because like,
He's only out
even
for like 2 to 5 weeks.
that was another meme that I saw is that Joe Burrow, like, has a super bad turf toe, and he's, like, barely being assisted into the locker room. That
Oh, I
was the
guess
other thing that I was
The
like,
Bengals apparently don't have one of those gators or whatever,
which is weird because you
but
would
they
think
do have an
that.
MRI. They do have an MRI machine in the stadium,
They
so that
do.
you kind of, yeah, you take your
Yeah,
victories there. I think they're
yeah,
actually the only team in the NFL with an MRI machine in the stadium. Probably
yeah,
because because that's what they make it work with this. That's
mhm,
how I don't know. That's
the
so
compensation.
yeah.
I'm actually really excited that next like, the first full game for Jake Browning is this Vikings game next week.
Same.
Like, I think it's a great thing for him. I think the Vikings just got exposed last night,
Hmm.
by a Falcons team that I don't think is as good as the Bengals team is.
No,
So, I'm interested because I think this is a like you said it before, I think it's a very winnable game, and I think the Vikings just got exposed. I just think that our pass defense needs to do what it's done in the last couple games and make the plays where it counts. and then just make sure JJ McCarthy doesn't turn into 2023 JJ McCarthy in the fourth quarter, and I think we'll be okay.
We'll see. I'd love to
Yeah.
have another happy 3-0 conversation next
I would
Monday.
too. It'd be amazing.
Like I said, just win 5 games. They just
They
have
can
this
do.
brutal. They have the brutal stretch, pretty much starting with this Minnesota game, and then you get
Yeah.
then it lets up a little bit, and then it is like the back end of the season just stinks when it comes to
Yeah.
like
Well,
the
the
other.
Lions and Packers back to back isn't going to be fun either.
That's things, and this stretch. I don't like this stretch because it's Lions, Packers, and then Pittsburgh Thursday night football. That's a tough
Yeah.
turnaround. And then the
Mhm.
Ravens game is Thursday night Thanksgiving. You go Thursday
Yeah.
night Thanksgiving at the Bills versus the Ravens at home. That's such a dumb sandwich right there.
Yeah, but
I
you
mean,
never
like,
know what it's gonna look like when we get down to the end of the season. Like, who knows who gets injured on their team between now and then? We have no
I
idea.
didn't want to say that, but it's like
We
the
have no
NFL
idea.
is it's a cruel sport where
Mhm.
it's so easy to get injured, but I don't know.
Yeah, but
Bengals are 2-0. That's what
yeah,
two
1
main
of
takeaways from
6.
the 1 of 6. Bengals are 2-0. They have the opportunity to make it happen with a competent backup quarterback and 2 of the best receivers in the NFL. We hope to come
Mhm.
back with you next week, maybe a 3-0 conversation.
Would
Bengals in
love that.
Minnesota next Sunday at Minnesota. I believe it'll be a cool time to check that. I think it'll be a fun matchup. So
I
we'll
think
see
so
what
too.
happens. Hopefully, we come back to you next week at 3-0. For Caroline Palmer, my name's Owen Timmerding. As always, we'll come back to you with more Bengals news and notes as they happen on our timeline. Thanks for tuning into this week's episode of Welcome to the Jungle. Who Dey, everybody. Thanks for tuning in.